In the chaos of war, some heroes don't wear uniforms. They have fur, paws, and a heart full of loyalty. This is the story of a soldier, and the dog who saved him in ways no one could ever expect. This is the story of Captain Evander, a man who served with honor and bravery, not just on the battlefield, but in every aspect of his life. But what you may not know is that the true hero of his story isn't just another soldier. It's a dog named Milo. Before the war was a man Evander driven by duty, but it wasn't until he met Milo that he truly understood the meaning of loyalty, trust, and unconditional love. It was on a cold morning in 1926 when Evander first laid eyes on Milo. He had been in training for months, getting ready for deployment, when the military K9 unit introduced him to a young service dog with a fiery spirit and an unshakable loyalty. At first, it wasn't an easy connection. Like any new partnership, there were moments of uncertainty. But over time, something extraordinary began to form, an unspoken bond that only those who've served in battle could understand. As days turned into weeks, their bond grew stronger. They weren't just a soldier and a service dog. They were a team, and the battlefield would soon put that bond to the ultimate test. For Evander, Milo became more than just a companion. The war was hard on him. There were nights when the weight of what he'd seen and experienced kept him up, lost in thoughts that felt too heavy to carry alone. And yet, Milo was always there, waiting, watching. Sometimes it was just the touch of a paw or the nudge of a nose that brought a fleeting sense of peace. Milo didn't need words to understand the pain in Evander's eyes. He simply knew. In the midst of all the chaos, there were moments when time stood still. The bond between man and dog wasn't just forged through training or duty. It was formed in the stillness of their shared solitude. It was in those quiet moments that Evander realized that Milo wasn't just a dog. He was a protector, and while Evander couldn't have known it at the time, the loyalty they shared would soon be tested in ways neither of them could have imagined. Enfidante and a friend who would never abandon him. The day came when the orders arrived. Evander and Milo would be deployed to K9, a place filled with danger, uncertainty, and the unknown. They were ready, or so they thought. In that moment, as they said their goodbyes to the world they knew, Evander had no idea how much the dog's presence would mean in the battles to come. It wasn't just the dog's training that would save him. It would be the bond they had forged that would see them through. What started as a partnership, built on trust and duty, would soon evolve into something even greater, something unbreakable. Because in war, there are few things more powerful than the loyalty of a dog and the courage of a soldier. But no one could have predicted what would happen next. For Evander and Milo, their bond would soon be tested in the most unimaginable way. War is chaos. In an instant, everything can change. But in the heart of battle, it's the most unexpected heroes who make all the difference. In the heat of battle, when the world is nothing but noise, dust, and danger, it's easy to lose sight of what's important. But for Captain Evander and his service dog Milo, every second was a reminder that life itself could change in an instant. What no one knew was that on this day, everything would change, not because of a bullet, but because of the bond they shared, and the bond they would have to depend on to survive. The day had begun like any other, a routine patrol. But in war, Nothing is routine. Nothing is guaranteed. In those moments, the soldier knew that Milo was more than a trained companion. He was his protector. They had trained for this moment, together. But even the most prepared can never truly anticipate the horrors of war. One wrong move, one misstep, and everything could be lost. The dog suddenly stops, ears perked. The soldier's eyes widen in alarm as the dog's behavior changes from calm to alert. He slowly crouches, signaling the dog to stay still. In an instant, Milo sensed something was wrong. His instincts, perfected over months of training, kicked in. The threat wasn't a gunshot. It wasn't an enemy soldier. It was a landmine, buried just beneath the earth, silent, waiting for the wrong step. In that split second, Milo did what no one else could. He jumped forward, throwing himself onto the soldier, taking the full force of the explosion meant for his partner. As the dust settled and the smoke began to clear, all Evander could hear was the ragged breath of his loyal companion, who had taken the hit. His dog, his hero, was hurt, and there was nothing he could do except pray for his survival. In that moment, everything stopped. The noise of the battlefield faded away, and all that mattered was Milo. The soldier had survived, but would his dog? Would his hero make it? But the dog wasn't done yet. Even injured, even in pain, Milo refused to give up. He knew the soldier was still alive, and he wouldn't leave him, no matter the cost. For Evander, there was no doubt that without Milo, he wouldn't be alive. Not just because of the landmine, but because of the bond they shared. They had saved each other more times than they could count, but this moment, this life-or-death situation, would forever change their relationship. It wasn't just the dog's training that saved him, it was the dog's heart. And in that moment, Evander understood something that he could never forget. His dog had become his guardian angel, his protector, not just in battle, but in life itself. The journey back was hard, filled with pain and uncertainty. But for Evander, the hardest part wasn't the explosion, or even the fear of death. It was the thought of losing Milo. In war, there are no guarantees. But what Evander knew for sure was this: the bond between him and Milo was unbreakable, and no matter what happened, he would never forget the courage that saved his life. But even as Evander sat in that after the battle, the real war begins. For Evander and Milo, the hardest battle was not in the field. It was in the quiet of the hospital, where healing was just as uncertain as the next mission. The hours that followed were the longest of Evander's life. He had faced gunfire, explosions, and death countless times, but this was something different. It was the uncertainty of knowing that the one thing that had saved him in battle, his partner, his friend, might not make it. As Evander sat in that sterile hospital room, all he could think about was Milo. The dog had saved him, but now it was his turn to save the dog, and he didn't know if he had the strength to do it. The soldier couldn't shake the images in his mind. The dog had been hurt so badly, and he wasn't sure how much more Milo could endure. Could the dog ever recover? And if not, could he live with the guilt of losing him? He wondered if Milo had known the risks. Did the dog even understand that in that moment he had sacrificed himself to save the soldier's life? The more the soldier thought about it, the more he realized the incredible bond they had formed, something deeper than just a partnership, something that transcended the violence of war. Those words, "He's going to be okay," were the lifeline the soldier had needed. For the first time in what felt like forever, hope began to take root in his heart. But it was a long road ahead. Milo was still hurt. He wasn't out of the woods yet. The road to recovery wasn't just about physical healing. It was about the mental and emotional scars as well. Both the soldier and the dog had been through something no one could understand unless they had lived it. And the hardest part wasn't the pain. It was facing the uncertainty of whether things would ever be the same. There were days when Evander felt he could barely keep it together. The nightmares of the explosion still haunted him, waking him up in the middle of the night, heart racing. But it wasn't just his pain that troubled him. It was the sight of Milo, wounded, struggling to recover, yet still trying to push through. The dog's eyes still carried that same unwavering loyalty, but Evander couldn't help but feel the weight of what had happened. The two of them had been through hell together, and now, as they both fought to heal, the soldier realized that their battle was far from over. It wasn't just about physical recovery, it was about healing their hearts too. But Milo was a fighter. Despite the pain, despite the odds, he continued to press on. And the more the dog healed, the more the soldier saw the glimmer of the hero he had once been, the fearless protector who would do anything for his partner. And in that process of recovery, something changed. It wasn't just the dog who was healing, it was the soldier too. The soldier realized that his strength came from Milo. His dog had been through hell, and yet here he was, still fighting, still loyal. And that gave the soldier the courage he needed to keep going. The bond between the soldier and the dog had deepened. It was no longer just about saving each other. It was about surviving together. They were both broken, but they were also healing together. The road to recovery hadn't been easy, but through the pain, the fear, and the uncertainty, Evander and Milo had found something even more powerful than before. A renewed purpose. They weren't just partners in battle. They were survivors. And together, they would face whatever came next, knowing that they had each other. Their journey was far from over. The scars of battle, both seen and unseen, would always be with them. But as long as they had each other, nothing could break their bond. The story of their reunion was only the beginning. When the dust settled and the battles ended, what was left was not just the memory of war. It was the unbreakable bond that had formed between the soldier and his dog, a bond that would endure no matter the fight. When you survive something like this, you don't just walk away unscathed. War leaves its mark. But for Evander and Milo, the scars didn't define them. What defined them was the strength of their bond, a bond forged in the fires of battle, tested by trauma, and now ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. This was no longer just about recovering from physical wounds. It was about finding their way in a world that had changed. It was about learning how to live again. War doesn't end when you're pulled from the battlefield. The real battle often begins when you're left to pick up the pieces of who you used to be. For Evander, the hardest part wasn't the physical injury. It was the aftermath of the explosion, the memories that linger, the flashes of fear and guilt that never seem to fade. But the one thing that kept him grounded was Milo. He had seen his dog give everything to save him. And now, Evander would give everything to help his companion heal. But that didn't mean he wasn't struggling. The weight of it all was still heavy on him. Through all the therapy, all the sessions, Evander had come to realize that Milo was not just his companion. He was a lifeline, a reminder that there was still good in this world. In the dog's eyes, the soldier saw a reflection of himself, the survivor, the one who had made it through the worst, still standing, still pushing forward. It wasn't just the soldier who needed to heal, it was the dog too, and in the quiet moments, when the world felt too heavy, Evander knew that his dog would always be there, just as he had been before. Returning to duty wasn't easy. The soldier had witnessed things that no one should have to see. His body had healed, but the emotional wounds, those were still fresh. And even though he had his dog by his side, the thought of going back into the battlefield filled him with anxiety. When the soldier and Milo returned to the front lines, it wasn't just a return to duty. It was a return to the trust they shared. They weren't just a team. They were a unit. The soldier's confidence grew the moment he saw his dog by his side again, ready for whatever the world would throw at them. The battlefield was still dangerous, but now the soldier knew that he wasn't facing it alone. He had Milo, his best friend and partner, at his side. In an instant, everything changed. A sudden sound, a shift in the terrain, and the dog froze. There was a pressure plate nearby. The soldier's heart races as he realizes what's happening. He stands still, holding his breath, waiting for the next move. In the moments that followed, there was no room for fear. They moved together, the soldier relying on his dog's instincts to navigate the dangerous terrain. And once again, the bond between them saved their lives. This was more than a partnership. It was a trust that had been built over time, on the battlefield and off. Even as they faced danger once more, there was an undeniable comfort in knowing that they weren't alone. The soldier had learned something valuable in the quiet moments. After all the battles, all the pain, the bond between them had been forged in the fire of war, tested by sacrifice, and solidified by loyalty. And as long as they had each other, nothing could break them. Their journey was far from over. Every day would bring new challenges, but they had proven something far greater than their ability to survive. They had proven that no matter what came next, they would face it together, unbreakable, unstoppable, and inseparable. Every warrior faces a moment where they feel the weight of the world pressing down on them, where the battle doesn't feel like something they can win. For Evander and Milo, that moment was about to come, and it would take everything they had to survive it. Here are days in war where it feels like nothing matters anymore. The fire of battle dimming in the shadow of endless suffering. For Evander, this was one of those days. He had seen his fair share of hell, but nothing had prepared him for the storm that was about to break. And it wasn't just the battlefield that haunted him. It was the things he couldn't say, the weight of what they had both been through, the guilt, the fear, and the dark thoughts that crept in when no one was watching. These things didn't go away just because they were together. Sometimes they felt like shadows in the corner of his mind, following him even when he tried to outrun them. Everywhere they went, there was destruction. The faces of the innocent victims seemed to haunt him, as if they had no place in this war. He had witnessed enough death to last several lifetimes, but it was the faces, the broken lives, that stayed with him the longest. But it wasn't just the deaths of others that weighed him down. It was the silent screams of his own soul, the ones he couldn't express, even to the dog who had been with him every step of the way. The nights were the hardest. It wasn't the physical danger, it was the quiet, the stillness that made everything feel so much worse. Evander had fought against fear his entire life, but tonight he felt it creeping in. The fear that one day he would lose control. of himself, of the mission, of everything he had worked so hard to hold on to. And yet, in the midst of that dark moment, Milo remained his constant. The dog had no words, no deep understanding of the pain the soldier carried. But in his eyes, the soldier saw something pure, something untainted by the horrors of war. He had been in countless dangerous missions, but this one, something felt different. Maybe it was the pressure. Maybe it was the fear creeping in again. But deep inside, Evander couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would push him to his breaking point. In the blink of an eye, everything fell apart. The world exploded into chaos, gunfire, smoke, and the cries of battle. Evander was back in the heart of it, but this time, something felt different. The dog, his partner, his rock, wasn't responding like he used to. It was the moment the soldier had feared most, the one thing he had never prepared himself for, the moment when he was faced with the possibility of losing everything, losing the one constant he had left. In that moment, the soldier had to make a choice. Was he willing to risk everything, to sacrifice the only person who had never let him down? Or was it time to walk away, to save himself and let And then, just when all hope seemed lost, a miracle happened. The dog stirred, lifting his head slightly. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to reignite the fire of hope a war consumed them both. Their journey didn't end here. Together, they would face the future, stronger than ever. Now, reunited, Evander and Milo are inseparable. The bond they share is unbreakable, and together they are learning to move forward. For Evander, his journey doesn't end with the war. Healing is a lifelong process, and the dog who saved his life is with him every step of the way. I owe him everything. Without him, I wouldn't be here today. He's more than just a dog. He's my family. There are thousands of brave veterans who need the kind of support that only a service dog can provide. If you've been moved by Soldier's Name and Dog's Name's story, consider supporting organizations that help veterans find their own four-legged heroes. Donate to Super Thanks today and help change a life.